What kind of man has everything and throws it away? What kind of man grows up with the religious education, very expensive training, culturally significant, well-founded in his community, and then throws it away to speak dirty to drunk audiences? What kind of man has the power of the words, the magic of the rhythm, the accolades of millions, and throws it away to talk about our Lord Jesus Christ? What kind of man does these things, would you say? A wise man? A greedy man? A foolish man? Tonight, we have two fools that we'd like to talk with you about. We will leave you to decide which one is which in our story of, well, if I say it out loud, it goes into the internet. Which one is the true Jew? Welcome to the Mosaic Ark. Into the Ark. So are we qualified to talk about this? I mean, I realized that if we're going to do, well, Ye and Ari, as we promised, I needed some, some black girl courage, probably. I mean, so no, the thing is, it's like, where do insofar as I have any authority or ability or right, I don't know, what's the right word, license, that's the word, license, to have the conversation that we want to have this night. I at least live on the south side of Chicago, right? That's something, right?
Yeah, you got the postcode. Oh, you got the postcode.
I got the post. Well, yeah. So I mean, we're in the sort of Hyde Park is the most integrated neighborhood, I think, in the whole of the country. At least, I mean, it's sort of weirdly, like if you look at our actual statistics, and parts of it are whiter than others, parts of it are blacker than others, but we are actually fairly mixed. And so, I have a good mixture of neighbors, so I can talk to them, right? And so I was going to say, what kind of cred do I have? Well, I realized I needed some wine because I ran out of my usual Vino Verde, which is my white girl drink that we get from Whole Foods. And so I went by the shop on the way home, and the store had, well, a whole rank of things that said black owned wineries, right? So I got my Black Girl Magic, which promises that it's inspired by the magic and resilience of Black women to be enjoyed by all. So I hope the McBride sisters of California can keep me focused tonight, insofar as I can. Right? Yeah. Oh, come on! You got to give me your credentials. I can give you. So I live on the south side of Chicago.
My credentials.
I spent today asking a small select group of, I don't know, very small poll of maybe 2 or 3, asking some of my neighbors, like, what do you think about Ye? Because he's local, right? His mother. Yes. I was very excited to realize this. I am not a big. I know this will shock you all. I'm not a big rap fan. I know it's what can I say? You know, I like Johnny Cash and the Irish Rovers and medieval music, and I just haven't listened to much rap. But I was interested to learn that Ye's mother used to teach English not at the University of Chicago, but at one of our sister schools down further south, Chicago State, and she was head of the department there for a very long time, like 24 years. So I suppose I could say I have the authority to talk as if, Ye's a faculty kid. He doesn't quite present as one, right? But his facility with language and the beauty of his rhymes and puns and resonances and poetry. I mean, you can tell his mom taught English, yeah. Mm-hmm. Which we established last week was pirate speak. So,
yeah, so he's fluent in pirate.
Kanye is Ye. I'm trying to stay with Ye because I think it's a biblical name that he's really working off there. So but he understands the power of our pirate speak. I definitely get that. I've heard that in the interviews that I've watched him give in the last month or so. So that's cool.
Mm. Well, that was part of the shock, was how he used that pirate language to phrase what he was doing. And he was brought in for questioning on how he phrased things, which was kind of an interesting thing because for a moment everyone forgot that they were asking somebody who played with language for a living why he was phrasing things in this heated way and using hyperbolic language, not realizing that maybe this is a technique of getting the attention that he wanted on a particular problem or something, I found that really interesting, that the artistic nature of what he does was forgotten about as soon as everybody decided to discuss his politics instead of discussing what he was doing, which was more of an art stunt.
Well, certainly an art stunt, and we have some pictures to talk through to think about exactly what kind of arts. But that he is in fact about language first. I mean, he was a rapper, and I was not going to pretend because that would be insulting. I think I was not going to pretend to have learned all of his rap music in the last month or so because I haven't listened to it. It's not something that's in my memory. But and that's sort of, so it's interesting. But the people kept interviewing him, be saying, "Oh, like you're a great artist, and most of the time I didn't feel like they knew the music any better than I do. Not all of them, right? But certainly some of the establishment characters, saying, "Oh, you're a great artist," and I felt like whatever they were talking about, it wasn't why he's a great artist. It was just, like they say, "Oh, you're either wealthy or you've gotten a lot of attention or you have good contracts," or there this kind of, why do we respect him? I mean, even to I think to establish our conversation tonight, why are we talking about him if we weren't big fans of his previous work? We've kind of learned who he is in the backstory. I mean, I had to purposely memorize the names of his kids because I haven't really been following their family drama. I've never watched an episode of anything with his ex-wife's. I don't think he thinks of Kim as his ex, right? But his no longer cohabiting wife. I don't know a lot of the things that have made him the figure that he is politically, but I was, of course, aware of him back in, was it 2016 when he wore the famous red hat, to help campaign with Trump, and that got enough people's attention, and I think that I think, to be honest, and we're going to try to be ruthlessly honest about all of this, I felt a responsibility right now to pay attention to Ye when he was being brought down, because those of us of the particular hue of skin that I am, who were voting for Trump back in 2016, for sure benefited from the fact that Ye came out as a Trump supporter, and therefore it would be wrong to now, when things got hot for him in another way, to suddenly go, oh, I don't know him, right? Classic Peter Cockcrow kind of problem. No, right? He was great when he was doing the Trump thing, and I have some more backstory too about, like the Jesus thing and stuff like that. But now, oh no, if he said something that he loses his contracts for, and I think I saw something saying his net worth, because of the way these licensing agreements work and such, has gone from whatever billions it was to a mere few millions at the moment. That whatever he was commercially has evaporated in the last month.
Well, this is the problem with the celebrity culture, because instead of discussing human beings within your nation, you're discussing branding. Brand that, somebody becomes a brand when they become a celebrity. Right. They're like mini corporations. And so he's changed his branding, or he's bad for somebody else's branding, and therefore he's depersonified and just treated as a sort of failed company. And it's like, okay, well, we've got to liquidate and now forget about this Kanye thing, instead of realizing that no, there's a person talking. It's the artist is a person versus the corporate brand that is their name and what they can give to everybody else. So this was kind of an interesting thing to look at, how he was viewed by a lot of his critics, and saying, we've got to get rid of him, he's bad for branding.
Right.
And also critics that were talking to him as though he was responsible for doing something other than performing the function of an artist, and not maybe seeing deeper into the kind of wording and phrasing that he was using and why he was doing what he was doing.
Well, I mean, this is the sort of thing that what you've said right now about the brand is absolutely spot on, because of course the whole thing about the hat. I mean, so in my very informal poll of my neighbors today, it's like one of the people I asked, I said, so what do you think about Ye? And I mean, these are people more my age than, I don't know. I mean, Ye is, again, we're sort of talking about these people between your and my age, so it's an interesting kind of who's the fan base of these performers. But the people I was talking to were maybe a bit older than me, and so it was like, what do you think about him? And one of them said, these are both men, right? And one of them said, well, he went astray when he wore the hat. And I'm like, okay, we're in Obama country. that's not necessarily a surprise, right? It's like, okay, that makes sense. But the same person was saying, but he really went astray when he got involved with the Kardashians, because that is that celebrity culture that is not, I mean, I was curious about this. It was like, to the degree that he didn't actually grow up in the South Side. He grew up in like the West suburbs more than around where his mom was teaching. But, to the degree that he's local, how much do you see him as one of ours, in the sense of when I personally hear him talk, he sounds like this neighborhood, right? It's like the cadence of his voice, the kinds of expressions that he uses to make points and stuff. I mean, they're very, I'm like, yeah, I get it, right? Those look like expressions I would see people here use. And so, and that actually matters, because I say, I've said to the other kinds of immigrants into this neighborhood, me, an immigrant, right? I moved in here in 94. These people in our neighborhood sound like my family. They sound like where my mom's family came from in Arkansas. They sound like Southerners, regardless of what color they are. Right. So there's a kind of layering of that. Anyway, so I'm asking the guys, and one of them saying, he got involved with those Kardashians, and that celebrity culture is the problem. And then the other one was sort of shaking his head. I'm like, okay, you disagree. And I'm like, what's going on here? And my other friend was saying, no, what you need to understand is, and it's precisely what you were just saying, there's a gesture role, which is obviously our theme, right? That the reason Ye does the things he does is he's wanting an effect, and therefore it is ironic that the very thing that he was given the branding and the money and the celebrity for was the thing, surprise, 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 that they're now getting angry with him at, right? It's like, but no, you were supposed to stay in your box. Once we branded you and marketed you, you're supposed to be that brand, and now you're suddenly bursting out. And it's like, well, what did you, it is a little bit like my friend Milo, right? When you want someone to stay in this color, you know, this shape of character, and you find out that was, you know, that was useful to make one kind of point, but it's not the other, it's not everything.
Yeah, well, it's turning living beings into corpses.
Corpserations.
The corpserations.
The corpserations.
Yeah. And we're not supposed to be like that as Christians, especially.
Right.
I mean, we talk about ourselves as reborn in Christ. We live in Christ. He lives in us. We live through him. So there's this concept that I think is maybe a clash in the sense of that maritime pirate culture really coming up against a Christian mindset that sees people, no matter how successful or renowned they become, we expect them to behave still as living beings, you know, as Christian beings versus brands, which the West doesn't have a very good ability to do at the moment. Because it's kind of like celebrities, the new aristocracy. It's a kind of or a new religion, something like this. People find it. I mean, you and I have had conversations about this before. When somebody changes from their assigned role, it makes everybody very nervous. And so, you know, he has his assigned role as an artistic brand, and he's decided, okay, now I have a different assigned role as a Christian.
Right.
What his function becomes then as that jester type within his understanding of Christianity is clashing with his corporate branding.
Well, my sense, Casey's saying corporations rebrand us as products. What is being done to Kanye by the powers that be, or what corporations do to us daily, commoditizing us. Yes. You know, what is ironic and sad is the reason that the corporations pick up artists like Ye is the corporations they have to bleed off of living creatures because they're dead things. The corporations, the corpserations, they find living artists. And this is, you know, this is the danger. I think this is what one of my friends was saying, is like he shouldn't have gone with those Kardashians. He went for the money. So even though that friend was not saying, you know, he's good as a jester, but he recognized the problem of once you decide to go for the money, as Vox would say, take the ticket, you are now in their, you know, you have to be their puppet zombie brand, you know, put in perspex and put on a shelf. So they you know, they brand Ye as rapper at one point, and he, you know, makes them a lot of money, and they don't want him to stop being that, because that brand in their dead vision makes them a lot of money. It doesn't matter that, you know, corporations do not in fact make money indefinitely. We're watching some of the tech ones lose money right now. Yeah. So this idea that the brand preserves your profit in perpetuity is like totally wrong, because it clearly doesn't. But the corpsing of everyone wants to believe that, like, if we can freeze them right now, they will, you know, the golden goose kind of thing, ka-ching, 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 ka-ching. And it's obviously, I mean, it's incredibly hard for people to resist that. That's one of the things that we've watched in the culture wars happen over and over and over again. I mean, Candace Owen, who's a part of Ye's story right now, got apparently just got let go from Daily Wire. That if you risk continuing to be alive, you're going to lose the thing that they gave you to be frozen.
Yes.
Mummified. They want you mummified and fixed so they can keep making as much money off of you as they possibly can. But the problem is then your art dies and you become worthless. It's ironic that is, I mean, it is true. The more the artists take the ticket and want to, have the fame and the attention and the apparent rewards for their art, the less they're rewarded for their art.
I just thought of Madonna's face that flashed in front of my eyes. Sorry, but
But this is a good counterexample. Go ahead.
It's a good example, right? Because she had a kind of branding phenomenon as the woman who mixes sex and religion,
right?
And then has this, her real name being Madonna Ciccone. It's like she's named after Our Lady. So she has this phenomenal effect on Western culture because she's mixing sex and Catholicism, sex and religion. So she goes through all of these incarnations, but it's the same, like reincarnating the same theme. It's sex and religion, but she can't turn it off because then the brand, it changes. So instead of instead of aging gracefully and kind of going into her golden years in a more enlightened way, she's morbidly transformed herself into a plastic version of her 20-year-old self. I mean, like, everybody who hasn't seen her on Instagram, see her on Instagram, you'll never want to see it again. But
you won't sleep for a little bit. She's actually really excellent example.
She's a figurine of Madonna. Yeah, she's become a figurine of herself because she hasn't allowed herself to be living outside of the brand that she created. So she's like completely fused herself with her own corporate identity, and then you see this Borg-like mannerisms on Instagram where you think, oh my God, is someone still in there? Like, but that's the end result of not being able to continue as a human being. And then
well, so we'll contrast it. We can do some of our images now, because I think contrast this with what Kanye did, or Mr. West. I don't know. It's interesting. It's hard having just a one syllable name. It doesn't scan. Where's the second? I think in I ams, Kanye seems like I am to me, and we need the rest of it. So he and Candace back in October, right? It's like ages ago in Ye terms. Back in October, appeared in Paris at the Yeezy runway show, Paris Fashion Week Yeezy runway show, and he and Candace are wearing the White Lives Matter shirts, although they're like black and white. White Lives Matter. And one of the interesting things, everybody's always talking about what's on the back of the shirts, and I've in none of the interviews that I watched, I can't say that I watch every interview, but I watch all the ones that I'm aware of, nobody's ever asking about what's on the front. Which is, I mean, her shirt has Pope John Paul I, who famously only was Pope for 33 days before he died, and then his shirt, Ye's shirt, has Pope John Paul II, who then had one of the longest reigns and has been canonized. He dies in 2005 and is canonized in 2014. And they both have inscriptions, Juan Pablo, in Spanish, right? It's like whatever's going on in this shirt. It's interesting because as far as I know, Ye is not Catholic, but he's got popes on the front. He has Juan Pablo at the bottom of the inscription, and then I should be able to say Spanish better than I can. Seguiremos tu I should have pronounced. We'll follow his example. I want to say it in Latin, right? Seguiremos tu ejemplo. Man, my New Mexico cred's gone. Why is someone from
just lost it forever? You can never go back to New Mexico now.
They'll let me back in. Again, we will follow his example. And of course, the Pope follows Christ's example, and we have White Lives Matter. I mean, one of the deep jokes, most of the time when Ye talks about it, it's like, well, of course, White Lives Matter. And he says his dad thought it was a great joke and things like that because it's true. But the Pope wears white, right? So there's whiteness in a number of layers in this particular art performance. And I really I credit Ye with one. I mean, he's had an interesting affect throughout the different interviews he's been in, and I've been watching that. It's very interesting. But at no point he's just said, "Are you that stupid that you can't figure out there's layers of significance in these labels that I'm trying to show you?" I mean, it's like, what white? Maybe is it baptismal white? Is it, heavenly white? Is it angelic white? No, they're all just assuming that the first thing he's doing, I mean, which he is also doing, which is answering the BLM argument about, how do we do social protest? I am convinced that he is, at no interview that I've heard has he actually unpacked the meaning of those shirts. He's just let it kind of rage around and startle everyone.
Well, no one's asked
him.
And we can comment on this because we're poets constantly playing with the meaning of the words that we're using. And also because we're, in DCR, we're anchoring all of our poetry in the medieval, we're anchoring it in Christendom and the Christian understanding of these terms. So this is a kind of, it might be an example of Ye using anachronistic terminology deliberately to shock everybody, because the language now that we're all speaking is almost like a foreign language. I don't, that's why I said to you, like the pirate tongue that we're speaking now, I hate English because we have no control over the terms. We're being given these categories. When you say white, you get a particular version of what that means. When you say black, it's a particular version of what that means. Christians aren't in control of English right now. So what I'm seeing from what you've just described was Kanye taking control of English with the popes on the front, obviously saying, this is Christian English. You're going to read it in a particular way now. But if you go into the front, you see it through that lens, you're going to read this in a completely different way.
Well, we're not in control of the language. We know we're friends of E. Michael Jones on this show. And Mike had a very interesting interview recently with Unwashed in England, which they ended up talking about white and black and what that means in the English context. But the great thing that Dr. Jones has just published is this big book on the dangers of beauty, and the chapter on English art, the chapter on what the English have done beautifully is poetry. I mean, that is, and he and the young man in Unwashed, whose name I forgot, and I forgot to make notes. Talk about how the English don't do any other arts. All other arts, the English import their, artists, their architects, their musicians, their, painters. I guess maybe Turner was English, but the great English art. If you want, we've said this before with DCR in our poems, iambic pentameter is what English is. It's the great beauty of our culture. If we have, the Anglo culture. If you don't practice iambic pentameter, you basically are not participating in English beauty, because that's where it lives. And I'm so, whoever's watching this, guys, you've got to get Ye in touch with us. We want to talk poetry with him. We want to talk, I am, right? He does, like, there are moments in his interviews, like one when he's talking with Lex Friedman, and Lex says something, I don't remember what it is, and Ye starts riffing off of the sound. And it's like, oh, that goes together, and then Ye's, he's thinking, I'm a genius. His genius is in this understanding of the rhythms and the sounds of our language, and so people are freaking out over this artist who truly is a word artist put "White Lives Matter" on the back of a shirt with the Pope on the front, and you haven't asked him why it's in English and Spanish. What are you thinking?
Yeah. Well, I like McLuhan moment. They're reading, they're not listening.
Right.
These people are addicted to literacy, whereas he's in the acoustic. He's thinking sonically, and they're reading, so they're freaking out because it's like, you've written this thing, which is awful. Whereas to acoustic thinkers, it's, oh, I didn't hear that. It sounded different to me. So there's this clash.
White lives matter. Why do lives matter? Also, the shirts. I mean, there's a kind of Stroop test in it, fancy cognitive science term, that Candace Owens' shirt is white with black lettering, and Ye's shirt is black with white lettering. And, it's sort of like, so hers says white lives matter in black letters, and his black shirt says white lives matters in white letters. It's a whole, because we haven't got him on the show yet. We're working on it. Please, God, send us Ye to talk to us about why, what he may not have been. I suspect, watching him in these interviews, he's conscious of it, but not always at the level that, like, oh, I thought that out perfectly. It more is the way it happens when we're writing in our own poems. And like in the stanza that we're working on right now, we've got an elephant in there for no reason other than it rhymes. But no, there's a reason there's an elephant there. Why is the elephant in the room? We're going to make the elephant mean something, right? And you can get the
that bloody
elephant is going to mean something. You can get something that is significant. It's there because it kind of landed on you. And then later you think it out, and then the scholarship comes in and explains this or that, and the artist is sitting there going, okay, it felt right. And now there's a horrible temptation in scholarship to like pin it to the wall and kill it again. The scholarship and corporations do the same thing. Here's that thing that you just said, therefore I know what it means because I'm the scholar and I read it and scan it. And the artist is going, it dropped on me. What are you talking about?
Well, this is the kind of the difference in thinking between the media and the normies and everybody who's in a literate mindset versus the acoustic thinkers of the world. Because acoustic people are not really concerned with things that are printed, right? So it's like, it doesn't matter if you wrote something incorrectly, it's how we're going to communicate it, so like sonically and acoustically, and thinking about what actually is someone trying to say to me, which means then I have to repeat this in order to continue the conversation, because if it's not printed, it disappears unless people are continuously talking about it. So I think with Ye, this first genius stroke was to get everybody talking. Yes. It was like, you can write one thing on Twitter, one tiny paragraph, and it exploded the world so that suddenly millions and millions and millions of people are repeating the same phrase and talking about the same phrase. That's the art. That's where I was like, okay, he's done this to get everybody talking. What does he want everybody talking about?
Indeed. So now I have, let's see, I get the slides moving. All right. How I actually at first heard about Ye, and I'd say there was the hat with Trump and things like that, and I was like, okay, so I didn't know why I needed to pay attention to him until back in October 2019. So it feels like, how long ago does that feel like? October 20.
Way back in the dark
3 years
ages
ago.
of
It really isn't that
2019.
long. 3 years ago, on October 26th, Jonathan Pageau was here in Chicago to give a talk at St. John Cantius. And those of you who are true fans of our live stream know that the images that we're showing at the beginning of our mosaic arc here are a window from St. John Cantius and the apse with the resurrected Christ, right? So Jonathan was at St. John Cantius to give a talk on the restoration of sacred art, which is the theme that the canons have for the church, right? It's the Instauratio. Oh God, I've blown my Latin today too. I have no words. Okay.
Now you're banned.
All I have is English. No, all I have is English. I just have English. I'm speaking pirate tonight because we have to do with yay, right? Yay, the pirate. Anyway, so Jonathan, who I'd been on his show some years, a couple of years before that, I think 2017, right? When he wanted to talk to me about Milo, because Jonathan has always been very, very interested in fools, of which Milo is one. And I've been writing about Milo as a holy fool, right? It's like all through 2016, 2017, I was seeing him play this kind of roly-poly panda role from the Kung Fu Panda, and therefore Vox is right, no one's wrong, pandas exist. Inside joke for those of you who are unauthorized. And Jonathan wanted specifically to talk to me about what I saw in Milo as the fool, and I'm like, well, that's cool because you all, if you follow the symbolic world, Jonathan is very interested in the kinds of things that we are here at Mosaic Arc as well. It's like how stories fit together, how patterns and images arise out of this mosaic. And in October 2019, Jonathan was talking to us in Chicago, which for him was significant because Kanye West then had just released his Jesus is King album, like the day before. and so Jonathan, in his talk, he retitled it Kanye West and the Restoration of Sacred Art, and opened with a little meditation on what he saw Ye doing in his Sunday services, right? Is that what they were called? The Sunday services. And he had, I'm showing now some images from Jonathan's talk, where Ye is there with the Jesus is King, the blue album, and then the sort of performance layout of one of his Sunday shows, which every time anybody's seen that picture online in the last 24 hours when I've been advertising this, it says it looks like an eye. So there's the grassy hill and the people in the middle and the ring in the middle, and then I think it's meant to look like an eye. It probably is. I mean, Ye seems to set these things up. He is, of course, in very sort of plain street clothes stuff, and I've been trying to think about, like, what does Ye look like gesture wise, and I think wearing the street clothes fashion is one of it. He's dressed in t-shirts, which may be very expensive or have series of popes on them, but he's in t-shirts and hoodies. He's worn hoodies and caps in all of his interviews recently. There's something that he's saying through those clothes, definitely. But that with these Sunday performances, he was very purposefully saying all the demons let him know this is a mission, not a show. So there's something sacred in the way that the audience participated in the music. And Jonathan talked about that. You can see it in the video that he posted it from Cantius, how Ye was at that point already conscious of trying to contrast the participatory mission engagement with the music, be in the music, with the usual sort of rock star performance where there's someone on stage with lights, out from the stage or on the stage, and you as audience are separated from the music, and you're passively there, right? The people coming to the Sunday services were meant to be part of the performance and the music.
Yeah, it's become more liturgical.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, yeah. I was just thinking as you were talking about the way he dresses, it was kind of like, when Mary Magdalene's in the garden the morning after the crucifixion, and she sees someone she thinks is the gardener. It turns out to be the Lord. It just kind of reminds me of that kind of like shape-shifting aspect to Christ, that he's sort of walking around and making himself look like a simple gardener, and that kind of stuff. So there's definite elements of that tricksterism there.
Yes, the sort of disguise as what is he? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, which is why it's so mind-blowing that everyone was taking him literally.
Well, so now I have the tweet showing that, one of the many tweets. They're not. He doesn't tweet that often, even though Elon is, sort of welcomed him back on the platform and things like that. But he's tweeting a response to Curie's. I want to say Curie, and that's not the way they say his name. That Kanye West shares a clip from Kyrie's response along with Bible verse, John 19:19, and Pilate wrote a title and put it on the cross, and the writing was, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. Over which Ye wrote, you can't be an anti-Semite when you know you are Semite. And it's like talking about the literate and the visual. And so Twitter is, it's kind of this mixture of both, right? It's literacy and it's visual, and you can show videos and you can but it is very it's very verbal. The things that people seem to get upset about are the verbal elements. And what you're saying is like they're reading and they're writing back, and they're not listening. They're never seem to be listening to what he actually says about being Jew. Right, he said that several times. I'm not Jewish. I'm Jew, and then he'll say he'll like I have the next one, which Rolling Stone played off of back in 2006, The Passion of Kanye West, and dressed him as Jesus, for goodness sake. Long before Ye, as far as I know, is making Jesus is King album.
Yeah, this was coming for a while in the mythological soup that we're living in. It was happening for a long time. Well, that's why I wrote about this element to this story when I published the article for Gab, the little blog post that I did regarding Kanye as the Ethiopian eunuch figure. Called Vending Machine Diaries, but it was a kind of continuation on all this confusion of identity that everybody has in the corporate environment versus the Christian world, and the way that the Christian world would think about these kinds of things. And I've probably said it several times already on our streams, but the main basis of that blog post and the theme running through that is the Ethiopian eunuch being an Israelite that comes up from Africa to Jerusalem, and that this event was recognized by the evangelist Philip as a genuine meeting of an African Israelite. So this is something that has been in Christian thought for so long that we have stained glass windows in Britain that depict this event, right? And yet everyone lost their minds over it on Twitter. It's just very strange. So the more he was tweeting, the more he was posting, the more outraged everyone was getting over this. I thought, I have to make some kind of comment on this, because now we're dealing with a contest of Christian thought versus the corporate vending machine view of the races, and this is why he's upsetting everybody so much. So I put it up there, mentioning Candace Owens, of course, because Candace's namesake is the famous queen that sends her eunuch up to Jerusalem. So the parallels in this were just too good. It was too juicy to ignore. And I wasn't really worrying about the offense as much as the amazing emergence of this kind of ancient Christian story in real time on the internet now. It was like magnificent.
Which verifies Ye's sense of, as I'm an artist, I'm making things happen. He's made this entire conversation explode and transform. And I mean, to go back, it's like the corporation. We have Buzzsaw Bear saying, "I don't buy into anything he says. He was crazy enough to procreate with a Kardashian." the way he named his kids too. Either he was reading the Bible or a map at different times. Okay, so the names of his kids, which I said I had to memorize: North, Saint, Chicago, Psalms. I'm convinced there's a poem in there, and that I've steeped myself in a little bit of celebrity gossip. So apparently, one of his friends suggested Northwest. It's a kind of joke off their last name, but I think North, Saint, Chicago, Psalms. That is the Northwest, Saint West, Chicago West, Psalms West. There's something deep in this, because the saint, like, what does it mean to be a saint? The city that he comes from, we play off a lot of, we've done St. Louis, right? Saint Louis, and that we are living the Psalms. You and I have talked about that a lot, and so what I get the sense watching Ye over this last month, which I'm happy I've done, is he finds these resonances like we are in our Dragon Commonweal work, and then goes, that's it. Right, it's like, and it might literally be one syllable, like Ye, right, that he's playing off of, and then it resonates out from, like, reverberates. And now I am interested to listen to his rap, although I'm not sure which period I need some advice on which period I should actually pay attention to. I listened to Jesus is King coming home from Jonathan Peugeot's talk in the rain in Chicago. It was very moving. It was quite beautiful, and I need to follow that up with some repeat listening, but I get the sense that Ye hears every single syllable, and they chime for him in powerful ways.
Which is, that's not a normal mode of thinking. If this is what makes somebody a good artist, though, is they're generally not going to be typical in the way that they think about things, or they process information. Sensorial information has a different level of meaning to artists. I think, like, if it doesn't, they wouldn't be artists. They'd just be doing normal jobs and having other functions. But there's something in this field which requires a kind of neurological atypical processing in order to work properly. I mean, his children's names, I've been thinking about this as you've been talking about it. The naming of his children in this way, it's very Afro-Semitic, because the Arabs, the Hebrews, other Semites across that region of the world, they give their children similar names. If you look at the names in the Bible, sometimes it's like, we'll call somebody lion, or we're going to call somebody palm tree, or we're going to name someone we're going to name someone after the area where we conceived them, because it was like a horrendous tragedy. And it's this way of naming, which is quite normal in the Afro-Semitic world, to have this kind of odd names, what people would consider to be black names. So it's just like an Afro-Semitic practice to have these kinds of names. And then the stories that happen, where in the scriptures you've got all of the children of Adam being given particular names, and you stack them all up, and it's sort of creating this poetic sentence of something that they were looking forward to, or they're expecting to come.
Right.
It's an old practice.
So Buzzsaw Bear, so was he following logos or pathos when coming up with those names? So we like thinking in dialectic binaries. And this is not dialectic binaries or tensions or oppositions. This is poetic. It's figures that show things of themselves at multiple layers, and metaphor, and the sound has to go with the sense of the word. And this is, so you mentioned we're in McLuhan world always when we're in this Mosaic arc, and we're doing the online electric conversation. And McLuhan in his early work on the Trivium pointed out that there's a great difference between the grammatical, poetic, monastic tradition, which is what we inhabit here in the Mosaic Arc, versus the scholastic dialectic tradition. And until I read McLuhan, I'd always had a hard time explaining why the monastic and the scholastic. I like the monastic, and the scholastic leaves me cold. And I just spent the past few weeks reading Aquinas on angels, and so Aquinas on angels is not the same thing as Hugh of St. Victor or Pseudo Dionysius on angels, let me tell you, even though Aquinas is reading both of them. That the way Ye is working, I mean, I'm even thinking, we're looking at this Rolling Stone cover. Rolling Stone, I mean, on the one hand, it meant to be, I guess, the name of the group, but he's Christ.
Yes.
The Rolling Stone is the promise of the resurrection. It's the stone that rolled away, right? And the other things that are on the cover, right? Cat power, James Blunt, Billy Joel. I mean, cat power, that's interesting. Bode Miller, out of control, God's senator, with God's senator sitting right there under Ye's ear, right? Inside the war room of the religious right. This is back in 2006. Battlestar Galactica, the toughest, smartest show on television. Wilson Pickett, 1941, 2006. And then The Passion of Kanye West. I mean, these accidental juxtapositions that are meaningful, and then you say, well, no, they're just laying out what articles they had in that episode of, or that issue of the magazine. And yet God's senator, the passion of, it's like, which of these things are intentional and which of them is the sort of accident of meaning? And that, I mean, we're always trying to figure that out, the difference between stuff that just happens and stuff that is fitting the pattern of significance.
Logos makes a joke.
And Logos seems to make jokes as well as have pathos and suffering. So what's interesting about that is in all of the interviews that Ye has had, he has this one with Tucker, and I was going through getting screenshots, and it was sort of typical. The body language, Ye's body language in these is astonishing, right? So Tucker is there with him in the warehouse of Ye's clothing company, I guess, out there in California, and Tucker is trying to be very respectful and Tucker like, and you're one of these great artists and I'm going to be respectful of you. And Ye is kind of in this kind of slumped past, and it's like he still looks like the kid who's being told off by the teacher at school in this, even though he's in the power position, because it's actually his building where they're sitting, but there's a complicated body language going on in these, and I think this was very soon after, because of the White Lives Matter shirt. Then I lost track of the cascade of things that happened. Right? It was very interesting because they do the White Lives Matter shirts, and then did you bother to look at the chronology of all this? I mean, it was like this house.
You're asking me?
Yes, I am. It's been a complicated month. My cat died, if you remember. This everything.
I know, but I'm kind of chronologically disabled.
You've been hanging out with me long enough. You can scan now. You can always scan when I first peeled you off the.
I don't think if
the
you leave
chats.
me, I will lose track of time again and re-enter primordial oblivion.
I keep you from falling into dream time down there, and
don't try and ask me to develop a sense of chronology. It's never going to happen. Sorry.
It could. The Anno Domini, we will get you in that. You belong in the year of our Lord. Okay, so anyway, but this one came first, right? And there's Tucker being respectful, but it was weird, right? Because it was almost like Tucker was too respectful. He couldn't play. He couldn't say anything difficult. He was trying to, let Ye speak his truth. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna like die of. It was an interesting exchange, but it wasn't. However, the Piers Morgan one was really up there. Oh my gosh. What is Piers Morgan doing on Sky Australia? I thought he was English. Why is he in Australia now? What did you guys do to deserve Piers Morgan?
What did we do to deserve being Australian?
Oh, well, okay.
Britain sends us British people, I think, occasionally to kind of remind us that we're not good enough to exist. That's probably why they sent Pierce down here.
Oh my gosh, that was this one. So I as I was watching, it was like this was like I mean, I said I was going to be honest, but I don't think I can honestly say something on camera that is just expressing my disgust at the way Morgan was behaving. But the sort of wanting to wrench an apology out of this disobedient boy, right? And you know, I didn't like that Ye was quite so. I mean, he kept putting his head down, and now I think it was because he wanted you to see the 2024 on the hat, but. I think there, but I've seen.
He was trolling.
He was trolling. I think he was trolling, but I also realized he understood the problem that he was in, which was letting Piers Morgan be so grotesquely awful was smart. I mean, that's sort of like this sort of whiny upper nasal kind of don't you realize you've hurt people? Ugh, I just.
Don't you realize you've hurt people?
It's like it's a female voice, but I find it hard to mimic myself. I hope if I ever use that voice, I will be shamed mightily by Drakes. Right? It's like.
Well, he was an example. He was an example of someone who was completely oblivious to the fact he was sitting in front of an acoustic artist.
Right.
Like, acoustic, different kind of brain. This strange. You know, he played obeisance to the fact that he was you know, successful artist, and you know, I really admire you. And I love your boots.
The boots. The boots were hilarious. Like, I wear those boots. I'm like, on what planet? No, you wouldn't. You'd wear them to garden in. Oh no, I dress up in those boots. I'm like, stop lying. I mean, that was the worst of it. It's like, no.
I mean, if you think someone's disgusting, just go about and say it. Like, I just didn't understand the pussyfooting around the whole situation. It was like, are you trying to butter him up so that he apologizes, or are you trying to chastise him? It was almost like he couldn't decide what he was doing.
Yeah.
And the more he complimented him, the worse it sort of felt, because I thought, well, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to understand why he's doing what he's doing, or are you trying to make him stop and apologize for it without any discussion on exactly what this is as an artistic phenomenon, potentially, you know? Or if this is like if it's a black and white, to use the term, if it was a black and white case of hate speech, or if it actually was an artistic performance art, and it was completely lost in that interview. There was no discussion at all.
Well, I think by that point there was that other tweet, which I don't have a copy of to show on screen, of the Death Con claim, which I think it's like, so there's the White Lives Matter shirt, and then the brouhaha around that, and then, oh no, the brand doesn't work anymore, we have to drop you. Again, I should have paid attention to exactly how these dominoes fell out, so that by the time he's on Piers Morgan's show, Morgan is trying to get him to apologize for don't you understand that if you say that it implicates a whole people, and it's like, yeah, because that's what we're surrounded by. But I mean, this is, I don't even want to unpack this because it's so stupid, but you know, the degree to which we can say blanket statements like kill all men or kill all white men, clip that,
yes,
right? Or, you know, Black Lives Matter or White Lives Matter or DEF CON, and never do you want to have context in this. It's like, do you know, you've dehumanized people, and I'm like, you've heard of allegory, haven't you? the number of times it's like you've called these, and you know, these people animals, and I'm like, well, what if I called him a lion? Would that be good? right? You know, the
We like
don't we like
lions.
lions, or an elephant, or a dog, or, you know, it's like, oh no, you can't dehumanize people. And it's like, you've literally never read apocalyptic literature, which uses these as allegorical allegories for, you know, great transformations of the spirit or something.
Yes.
Right? You know, it's like people, it's like what all of Disney gets out of business if we can't, you know, anthropomorphize animals and vice versa. What's the Lion King anyway? Lions don't talk. It's this sort of stripping out of, I don't know. The rhetoric is so boring and bland. I'm surprised that indeed, actually, that's what we're getting to. I'm surprised we are even so stuck in having to make these apologies. The next interview was the Drink Champs, with Nore and DJ. And it's very interesting watching these guys together, because although, I mean, Nore was very interesting because he was kind of scolding Ye as well. Like, you know, I thought you left the culture, and that there's some phrasings that they were using that I thought were into the culture, which I think is the music scene that they're both involved in. It's like Nori saying to him, I felt like you left the culture, but now you've come back. And so, I mean, Ye he pissed everybody off on both sides, whichever sides they are. You know, the whole ring of people are mad at him because the white people are mad at him for misbehaving in this way, which Piers Morgan is truly kind of say, you've been misbehaving. And I just want to say, boy, right? I was so insulted. I could not believe that Morgan behaved that way. It was like, ugh. I, you know, shame to be white. Under those circumstances.
No, don't say that. I'll chastise you.
Right. No.
Never.
So no, but it's interesting. It's like, which group am I going to be lumped with based on what? Right.
I was more pissed that it was a Catholic saying that to him than a pasty guy.
Fair. Yeah, no, that's
really.
good.
Like,
I didn't realize Morgan was
You're
Catholic. I didn't even care. He was just being so horrifically posh.
Yeah.
And Ye in his hat, looking, you know, keeping his head down, so all you can see is the 2024.
Well, I mean, like, look, Ye's family life is an interesting one because, you know, maybe they're saying he left the culture because he married into these like white girls, this white girl dynasty. Right. Armenians in Australia are not considered white. Armenians in like old world thinking are Oriental Orthodox people, part of our people, the ancient Eastern Church. So that's the other aspect I was looking at, thinking, well, even in this discussion over like you know, who he's married into and what constitutes his family's ethnic identity now, from our perspective, I'm not looking at a black man and a white woman and then someone who's left the culture and who's going, you know, off the reservation of acceptable discourse in terms of what America considers to be logical. I was thinking, oh, he's gone into the Orient. He's starting to think like an Oriental. That was the kind of you know, the resonance that I was hearing. So okay, he's starting to think like an Oriental. How does an Oriental think? They don't think in the same categories as the West. They don't speak with the same kind of categories as Westerners do.
Well, I think our division between the vending machine and the church is what everyone's missing. Obviously, I mean, it's like they're seeing. You didn't keep your brand, as we've said. You didn't keep in your category that we want to sell you with. And how dare you disrupt the world?
Yes. Oh, he smashed the vending machine open for a whole week.
Completely.
Just smashed.
Right. And then we end up with Lex Friedman's, and I have here with, you know, Lex is shaking his finger at him because saying, I'm Russian, that word that we have not been saying, Jewish. And that and the I think with this one they got closest, I think, to actually talking about what is at issue in all of this, because Ye has been talking and saying, I'm Jew, I'm Jew, I'm Jew.
Yes.
And Lex came back. I mean, there's an opening. They're clearly sort of talking about something else when they started recording, and then they're in the middle of the conversation. But the first thing they start talking about is a problem of history. And like, what would you study in school? What would you not study in school? And Ye comes up and saying, "Oh, I wouldn't study history." At which point my heart breaks. No, and it's a what does because like why not study history? And there I thought we ended up in this episode and last week's episode really intersect at an interesting place because with the Corona files, the argument over like should everybody just that phrase forgive and forget, right? And that's when I posted some of the cartoons, particularly the Bob Moran comic about amnesty, right? And the witches are getting burned, and they're saying, "Oh, we made mistakes on both sides. Mistakes were made," and when I post that into my Telegram chat, people are saying, "Oh, well, but Christians should forgive and forget," and I just like that's one of those paralyzing claims because you're coming in and saying, well, what, right? And is Ye when he's saying we should stop studying history, is that the same thing as forgive and forget? And then Lex first saying, yeah, oh yes, I agree we should go with the engineering problems because Lex apparently is an engineer and does tech stuff, and that's great. But at some point in their conversation, they get round to the point where Lex is saying, but you have to remember and you have to realize that my people, my family, has suffered, particularly in the Holocaust, and therefore you're not allowed to say these things that hurt all of us. Why don't you call out individuals, right? We end up in that particular hamster wheel of you should only blame the individuals, you shouldn't blame the people because we as a people suffered, and therefore you can't talk about that. And Ye sort of going, back and forth in the things that he was saying about, well, but what about, either slavery, which I think nobody has actually gotten him talking properly about that as such, although maybe it has come up, I can't remember, slavery and abortion. And he's saying, I think when he's saying Black Americans need to stop talking about history, one of the things is all you get as a Black American reminded of over and over and over again. Yes, 1619 Project. Thanks so much. America's, history of Black people starts with slavery. So literally nothing you ever get to be is anything but slaves on the one side. And then do you, well, anyway, I've kind of unpacked some of what we were trying to get to right now.
Well, no, I'm glad you are, because it's the question of origin stories and the thing that Kanye was saying regarding Mansa Musa, because he's mentioned Mansa Musa so many times and no one's picked up on it. And I'm sitting here with my little Afrocentric brain going, I can't wait for somebody to ask him a question about Mansa Musa. Why is he focusing on this Malian imperial figure? And nobody's asked him. Why? Is it because they're uninterested in his ideas, or is it because they're a bit nervous to go into a different kind of territory that they may not necessarily be able to use the same categories in? And I think this is where Kanye's brain works best, and that kind of t-shirt effect, black, white, the distinctions between those two terms and what they mean in different empires were completely different. And I think he understands that. I think he understands that there was a difference in different empires and different points. Because he's telling everybody we don't want to learn about history in one breath, Doc, and then saying, oh, we need a museum for Mansa Musa.
Well, the irony, so one of these ironic things, it's like, because I put the Trump hat on and ended up in the student newspaper for it, I did end up briefly this last year as a Trump appointee on the Cultural Property Advisory Committee, which is a State Department function, and we as a committee met with representatives from different countries who have memoranda of understanding with the United States to help prevent looting in their cultural property, and one of them was Mali. And so, in fact, we were talking. There was, in fact, a big exhibit of, I think it was now again I forgot what it was called, but it's like the African gold trade across the Sahara, which Mansa Musa was the beneficiary of, because he's king in Mali in the 14th century when this trade is at its peak. And there was, people were actually paying attention to history and to cultural property and to exchanges of museums. There was a big exhibit over the last several years sponsored by a professor out of Northwestern in Chicago of these great African artifacts from Mali. So if people did their like multicultural study and paid attention to, I don't know, the global Middle Ages, like I'm always being told I ought to, and I don't enough, they would know what he was talking about. I mean, he knows more than, clearly the people in the media who are talking to him, but also apparently, anybody in the elite, lettered classes who should be paying attention to these sorts of things.
Is this because we've all abandoned the medieval? Is this because everybody in the West has abandoned the Middle Ages? Yeah.
Well, I mean, there is a subculture in my field of medievalists who are, battering the rest of us over the heads for claiming that we hadn't been paying attention. But I say it's because, as you and I have talked a lot about, right, we don't actually, when we study the Middle Ages, we're never conscious of the Christian cross-cultural context. And it seems like Ye is, either artistically or historically, I'm not always totally clear, but that he keeps pointing to the fact that, Africa was Christian. So we're going to get to our next interlocutor, right? We've spent a good time building up why we're so interested in Ye and what we want to do with this. He seems to have, offended some members of another community, one of whom I only know about because, he was on these podcasts that I only watch when Milo's on. That Ari Shaffir was on Legion of Skanks back in May 2019 with, Milo, who tried to drown him. No, wait. Is he trying to drown him or give him wine? I think I need some more of my Black Girl Magic Riesling to mimic what Milo is doing for Ari, which is giving him a drink.
Pouring the bottle straight into
his mouth, which of course they are joking at the time, right? That this is Milo the whatever he is, the dangerous right winger, right? And how can you be on Legion of Skanks with Big J Okerson, Luis Gomez, and Dave Smith? They got a lot of flack back in 2019 about having Milo on.
It's funny that, isn't it?
And there's Ari. For some reason, his hand's in a wrist brace or something at that point. I forget what the thing is. Okay, I studied Ye over the last month. I have not studied Yari. Yari. Now I'm saying Yari, Ari. Yay, Ari. They're gonna be one.
See the acoustics, it all bleeds
by
together.
the end of this episode, they're just gonna be Yari. Yari. Yes. Okay. Annie is saying
the lion.
The lion. We're gonna have one great lion. So the one most significant thing I have learned about Ari Shaffir, I think this is right up there with, basically brands him forevermore as my homeboy, which is he and I share the same birthday. I've had this effect once when I looked at Brett Kavanaugh, who also has the same birthday. Brett Kavanaugh and I actually share the same birth date, right? It's like, the same year and everything. But Ari and I were both born on February 12th, so there you go, along with Abraham Lincoln and Darwin, for what it's worth, right? So that to me marks him as great, right? The other thing is, of course, you can learn absolutely everything you need to know about Ari's life story from the great YouTube special he just posted on November 2nd with the prophetic or resonant or completely telling or very helpful, useful title to us, Jew. And I did share this into my Telegram channel, and I got like some of my chat going, "Ooh, he's gross. He uses bad words. He you know, I should have recorded what they said. They didn't want to watch because the first thing he launches into is a retelling of Adam and Eve. It's a little rude."
Oh, with the front butt.
I've now watched it through twice, right? And it's like it was pretty startling and hilarious the first time through. But oh man, so you know, as he describes, he grew up Orthodox, not just Jewish, right? He grew up Orthodox.
Yep.
Went to, therefore, you know, Hebrew school, $15,000 a year for his entire childhood. Goes to, his patter is very good because he knows how to translate very nicely. He goes to seminary or yeshiva, right? So he goes to proper yeshiva in Jerusalem, and then has to tell his Orthodox father that no, he's like 19 or 20 or whatever. It's like he's been trained up as Orthodox his entire childhood, and then he says, "No, Dad, I want to say." The alliteration is very good, but I'm not sure I really want myself out there on camera saying it. Anatomical jokes to drunk people. To be a stand-up comedian instead, right? And there is so he's trying to translate his own understanding of what it was growing up Orthodox for these Goy audiences. He does a nice long riff on why Goy is not a term of endearment.
Mm-hmm. I think what was it? His phrasing was, "We're all various shades of Goy."
Yes, and then Jews are racist because, but are Jews are they racist or not? That they basically judge the rest of the world on IQ and income. He has taken every stereotype, and you talk about making White Lives Matter shirts. You got to watch Ari's newest special. It's intense.
Oh, it's probably one of the best things I've seen in years. Like the just samurai precision of exactly like what the culture is, and like just how freaking hilarious it must have been growing up in that world with all of these expectations on you, and then just telling your dad, "No, I'm an atheist and I'm gonna go and tell bad jokes in bars to drunk people." Like, I had when Milo was pouring wine down his throat, I had no idea, right? He's a great stand-up comedian. Absolutely great. This was a beautiful, beautiful production. And there's also, I mean, I have some pictures later. Right now I'm just showing Ari. The set design they did for this show is beautiful, right? There's all these candles, which I think has, you know, just like Ye with his shirts, right? There's a lot of there's layers in the candles, which are quite beautiful. And also, you know, there's a sequence in it when he's talking about Hanukkah, which is not, in fact, their major festival. We knew that. It's, you know, in Maccabees where the candles stay lit, or the oil lamp stays on. It's like, that's it. Our miracle is that, right? Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. I started thinking about these beautiful candles. It's like, well, another like invoking of religion, you know, another one of these artists that's invoking religion in their art and doing something completely new with it.
Well, so what's interesting is Ye realizes he's doing something spiritual, and Ari claims throughout this show, which is, you know, pretty rude because he's a stand-up comedian and that's his forte at the moment, claims to be not religious anymore, and by the end of it is saying, you know, I want you to go and examine your own religions and see what his riff on Catholics is I think quite powerful. but the thing is, the only thing he seems to know about Catholics is the problem with the sex abuse scandal with the priesthood, right? Literally nothing else. He doesn't seem to use anything else about Christianity except for, oh, Jesus walked on water, and oh no, he does have a riff on what Baptists are like in the rivers and stuff like that. But there's I would like to talk to Ari if that were possible. Guys, you know, we know people in my orbit seem to be in touch with a occasionally some of these guys, bless you.
Send a text message.
Give me the text. Somebody get me these. I want the numbers, right? So Ari's he
hasn't been talking. He hasn't been talking to Orthodox Christians. It's clearly, obvious.
Apparently not. He's talking to secular people.
Yeah.
Or maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to say.
Well, so this is the thing, right? So he's going through this magnificent overview of rabbinical Judaism and contrasting it with his understanding of Christianity, which seems to me a Christianity which is divorced from the temple tradition.
Yeah, very much so. He doesn't, but most people don't know that, right? Most people don't know what we've been talking about in the Mosaic Ark version of things.
But what he's kind of doing and what Ye is kind of doing have that crossover.
I think so, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, the stage setup of Ari's special, candles, immediately it recalls an ancient church. Prior to the electric lights, what did we do?
Yeah.
We lit it up with candles. And this kind of understanding of what we have to do as a people in order to reconnect to God, in order to offer sacrifices for our sins, and this kind of atonement process. So he had that overview of the kind of state of Hebrews and how they're going to do all of this without the temple in really funny ways. He's talking about the chicken and the goldfish and everything. Ye's talking about being Jew, which everybody freaked out about immediately because they're looking at Christianity without this temple tradition in the back of their minds. Yet, if you are considering Christianity with the temple tradition being the basis of apostolic Christianity, what Ye was saying made perfect sense. So this is the kind of, for me, in this moment, this was a moment where in the culture now we have to start talking about temple tradition, what that meant for the Israelites on the whole, and what it meant for the people that have been brought into Christendom, and then what Christendom became, which is the West.
It's very interesting that Kanye's last name is West.
Isn't it?
And all those children, his children's names, Psalms West. It's like that. What does that mean? So interestingly, those of you watching this may think, they've just put together Kanye and Ari in his Jew show, and this is a convenient juxtaposition for them to make certain point. Well, of course, Ari on stage a few weeks ago before his special aired, but presumably, it clearly took a lot of editing, and there's a lot of great camera angles and stuff like that. So presumably, he'd already made it by the time this came out. But back in October 21st, he's on stage in his baseball outfit at a stand-up comedian, and he's asking sort of what's out there in the news, and clearly it's towards the end of his set. I've just watched this little clip, and someone's saying what's going on out there, and with someone in the audience tells him Kanye West is full-on anti-Semitic. and I'm juxtaposing this with that paparazzi little interview that Yai gave, where he's showing his camera, and it's the chart with the owners of all the media companies.
Oh, yeah.
Which are red. What would Ari say to this? What did Ari say to this? Can you remember?
I think it was along the lines of, we'll just tell your...
Well, see, so Ari says, so what do you mean he's anti-Semitic? It was so cool. It was, this is the best 6 minutes you'll ever see. It's like nearly wiped out our whole live stream tonight because we just did it right in 6 minutes.
It was completely unrehearsed.
It was.
That was the other part.
Right.
brilliant response to it.
Okay, so wait, he it's like maybe I can do it. What he was anti-Semitic, and Ari's like surprised as if, right, and because Ye has said stuff before, right? This is literally not the first time any of this has come out, and it's certainly not news to those who know the Black community that there's tensions, right? And of course, Ari, to his infinite credit, understood instantaneously the context that Ye is talking in, which neither, Piers Morgan certainly didn't seem to, although he should, because they're in his entertainment, right? Tucker, danced around it and stuff like that. It's like, Ari saying, so he's gone from, low-key anti-Semitism to, full-blown anti-Semitism. Well, what did he say? And it was like, oh, he said something. And Ari's like, what, he said something? Are you kidding me? That? Why are we so worried about the words, right? What about sticks and stones never hurts, and gas chambers will hurt me? Ari's words, right? Yeah. So let's keep these things in perspective. And so what did he say about the audience fed it to him very sort of little pieces at a time, right? It's like, well, he said death con, and then Ari played off this like that. Isn't that the way Black Americans say th? Don't they usually say deaf? Oh, yeah. He's just doing, teaching Black people how to say the hard th. Okay, so what did he actually say? And he's like, oh, he's going to go death con on the Jews, and he's like, well, which Jews? Which ones? He's like, and then you could see Ari. He's actually figured out what's going on, and he's going, he means his agents, doesn't he? And then the glorious resolution of all of this, he stole my joke. I've been saying that for years. And then I was like, you really got to watch this. We'll link it. It's magnificent. He's saying, Ari saying, Kanye West is one of the greatest rap artists in the world, and he stole my joke. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. He took it's just gone, right? It's like, it's so, I would like to talk to both of them, but for the same reason, right? They are trying, by way of their art and their comedy and their foolishness, to break us. I mean, to talk about breaking the fourth wall, right? To break us out of, there's Ye making his Sunday services, right? And there's Ari saying, look, this stuff I grew up with is stranger than you thought. If you don't know about the Orthodox Jewish community, it is stranger than you thought. And you got we're going to have to tell them about the sin chicken, aren't we? But the Orthodox put their sins on the chicken or the bread. In Catholics, you confess to a rapist behind a counter. No, there's no filter on this, in terms of, and the thing is, I do disagree with Ari where he gets this. It's like all religions are going to end up with this weird stuff. That is our challenge, right? And I do think, unflinchingly, that's what we're trying to address in these streams. Is there does come a point where we do have faith, and we do see that Jesus Christ is our Lord, and we do believe that he is the fulfillment of the prophecies, and therefore we're going to disagree with Ari, but that Ari was able in 6 minutes to undo what nobody in the mass media of the branding has been willing to even consider. He was talking about his agents. That's why, and now I'm getting happily magicked up on my Black Girl Magic Riesling. What Ye says, there's one point, and I think I don't remember which one it is. I think it's in the one with the Drink Champs, appropriately, saying, I'm jealous, right? I'm jealous that, it's a Drink Champs one, right? Yes. I'm jealous that the Jewish people seem to stand up for each other in their own communities. Yeah. And we, as Black people, need to stand up for each other. We need to take care of each other. We need to, show it again, And I to Ye's credit, I had never quite appreciated how important this was. I live in a Black neighborhood. I'm surrounded by Black-owned businesses. One of my former parishioners at a church the Episcopalian church I used to go to, was Carol Moseley Brown, who's the first African American senator. Is it black woman senator or just black? Anyway, she was one of the senators from Illinois for our community, and she's an entrepreneur now. She makes tea. She has a tea business, and she also is a great supporter of. There's a art project in the neighborhood called Black Pearl. And this is a neighborhood where black businesses matter a lot, right? And Ye is to his infinite credit. One, he said the various things he said. One is, we black people need to take care of each other, right? It's like, you're going to have Irish Americans and Italian Americans and Polish Americans that have Cantius, or sort of. We also have a lot of Spanish that I should be able to say, and we should, black Americans should have a feeling of caring for each other. He said that. And now I've forgotten the other thing he said. Oh yes, he's lost all his money. And in the same interview, or was it the same interview where he's holding up the phone? He's saying, I've reconsidered the way in which I kept bragging about being so rich, that I was the richest black man. And God took it away from me. I kept saying that, and God took all that money away from me. I mean, if you want him to apologize, he's acknowledged his own self-aggrandizement as a feature of what's going on here in his. So we're going to take away now. Oh yes, this is so on the Piers Morgan thing, we have. Never mind what, the kind of jokes that Ari makes in this stand-up that YouTube is certainly not going to take down, right? It's like, we're the front butt that you have intercourse with, Adam, is the least of the things that he says. And the Piers Morgan interview with Ye had to contains moderately strong language. Like, excuse me, but I'm going to do it, and then Milo will be mad at me because I'm a girl and I'm not the mom and I'm not supposed to use this language on camera. But for goodness sake, you're labeling Ye with contains moderately strong language, and he's an artist. Ari's going to be able to say whatever he likes in this candlelit extravaganza, and he's not going to get labeled contains moderately strong language. You want an example of racism? I think we just saw one. Yeah.
I think that's pretty fair.
And you people wonder why I get so mad when you diss my city and my neighborhood. For goodness sake.
Well,
I'm going to take this away. I'm going to give them both a nice look. There's Ari's cheeking and Ye smiling. And now we're happy again. I'm gradually revealing to you the candles.
Oh, they're coming out. Beautiful. The candles are coming out. Well, this is the thing. It's like, who has control over English? We're having gang wars over who gets to control the English language now. Whose definitions are acceptable? Whose definitions are going to be the most commonly used, etc. A lot of people on Telegram, they'll insult Ebonics. Ari said Yiddish is Ebonics for Jews.
Yeah.
Understanding that it's that possession of your own dialect that really defines you, like get that kind of feature of like how you carve out linguistic identity. It's that I own the language that is rolling off my tongue, and then both of them are trying to do it. One gets a content warning, the other one is free to go, which is why I said I don't like speaking English, because at the moment that we're at in the culture wars or in Western history, I don't think anyone is really aware of who owns the rights over dialect formation anymore.
Well, so that when you're speaking about that one, I know there's great studies of Black English, I mean Ebonics or whatever, and mean, one I read in college, which was a great study of Black consciousness. Now I've forgotten the proper title. And he said, but music, right? It's like that. I want to, again. It's like I'm thinking of all these conversations I'd like to have with Ye, and I don't. It's like I don't even know how I do it because I don't want to be Tucker Carlson. I obviously don't want to be Piers Morgan in this. I can't be Nori and DJ, and I don't want to be Lex. So it's like, who am I? White woman, professor, or artist, right? And I'm like baby artist compared to him. But the sort of beauty and poetry of Black singing. I mean, it's like what turned into our music industry, obviously. Which I mean, E. Michael Jones has talked about that. Jewish agents were very much in the mix in the development of jazz as a particular commercial enterprise. I mean, the branding problem is huge. It's like we're going to take, and this is interesting. Okay, so we need to, we've really built this all up. So you got all the candles burning behind us now, right? So we're going to wrap it all into one big, might take us a while.
The bonfire.
The great bonfire. Guess what song Ari plays at the end of his special called Jew? It's Louis Armstrong's Go Down Moses. And Ye has spoken specifically about that, saying he wants to be, I mean, he said things like, Moses stuttered, right? Which is true.
Yes.
Maybe I'm not speaking perfectly. I mean, I was a little sleepy and I'm tweeting this and stuff like that. I like Ari's version of it better, but, Moses was imperfect. He stuttered. The Lord had to give him what to speak. Yeah, he's talked a lot about, he's like, here we are. The Israelites were the slaves. Well, Ari's talking about that too. I mean, he makes some jokes about it. It's like, well, you'd have them when you could be in Africa and you'd have other people to be slaves. Wait, oh my gosh.
It's so good.
I mean, they're both talking about the problem of like Moses freeing the slaves. Who are the slaves? Who are the slaves?
That's where it crosses over. It's an Egyptian problem. We're back to Egypt. We're back in Egypt. We're back with the Egyptian problem.
I had this potentially, it's a comment that got circulated on my Telegram, something about, don't you know all of these BS religions are stolen from Negro Africans, Egyptians?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, this is like this sort of layers of, the BS. It's like, yes, it all comes from Egypt. We knew that. But in all of these marvelous layers of, so one of the things Ari said when the audience is telling me about what Ye had said, he did something with Candace Owens and he's like, oh, she's an Ethiopian Christian or something. Black Hebrew. Yeah. No, he said Black Hebrew next, but the first thing he said about Candace was she's Ethiopian, and I'm like, oh,
yeah.
He knows. Because Candace Ethiopia, right? It's like he went straight to it.
Yeah. Well, because he knows.
He knows. I mean, this is what the joke. The funny thing about Ari's stand-up is it's the Bible, right? It's like we're going to talk about the Bible. That's how he opens it, right? We're going to talk about the Bible tonight, and then show you how Orthodox Judaism is not, in fact, in the Bible. There's all sorts of things that are not part of the Bible. It's the Talmud and the Mishnah and the Gemara and talking about how they train. I mean, the Orthodox training is in reading the Talmud.
And debating the ham soups.
Well, and liking loopholes. I mean, it's like, for goodness. And at one point, he asked people to like name your favorite stereotypes, and he's like, "Yeah, all true, but I mean, the funny thing is, it's like I get I'm a white woman. I mean, I'm also Scots-Irish and Presbyterian and an academic, and a certain age, and we are our stereotypes at certain points. And Ari obviously he's playing off of all of those for comedy, but I think also my sense was, and maybe Ye, I don't know about Ye so much, but Ari, he's purposely using all of these stereotypes to diffuse them. It's like, yeah, we're that we've married each other a lot, so we look alike. He used stronger language.
Yeah, considerably. But this is the kind of thing, like when I was shit posting so much this morning because there was another meme that came up. Someone screenshot something and sent it to me, and it was like, everyone thinks ancient Egyptians like African pharaohs enslaving African Hebrews. Ancient Egypt was whack, yo. It's like, yeah, but why is this so controversial? This is this strange phenomenon that I think everyone's kind of kicking at now. Ye's kicked at it. This mind-blowing idea that people that can look the same can treat each like slaves and enslave each other. This has been, from what I can see, kind of eliminated from the American conversation. Because we're the real Jews, we're the real Hebrews, not those ones. These ones look this way. They don't look they don't look right. Because everybody's thinking in the sense of it must have been one race enslaving another race. This is not how the ancient world would have been looking at it at all. And this obsession over who was slaving and who was the enslaved, and who gets to decide, who gets to claim both of those kinds of feats or tragedies, and who is policing other tribes or other peoples from being able to discuss their own history of enslavement and also enslaving other people. It's a really uncomfortable conversation to have.
Right. Well, this is when Ye is talking to Lex. I mean, it's like the saying slavery. The Black American story has been made, coterminous with slavery. Right? It's the Venn diagram of slavery. It's like your roots and nothing else. And it's interesting that for the Jewish Americans in particular, and my colleague Peter Novick wrote a book about this, you can't talk about anything but the Holocaust. And both of those stories, in fact, I think interestingly develop in the current conversation the way they do at the same time, right? It's Roots and Holocaust. They were miniseries. Talking about media problem. They're miniseries that played in the 70s. So I watched both of them growing up, right? Roots was a big deal. It was this big, we watched, it was like 4 episodes or something. And it's like a whole country watched. And the Holocaust one, I can't. I think it came out the same year as Star Wars. I mean, my big thing was Jesus Christ, Jesus of Nazareth, right? So written by Anthony Burgess of Joycean fame, and we'll have to talk about that again. But that we've been talking about the branding, and we're talking about the problem when people go outside their boxes. And Ari is talking about the problem of. He's talking about, he very specifically describes it as a very closed-in community, right? That they didn't know what was going on outside of their Orthodox neighborhoods as they were growing up. And so they were startled when they learned certain things. He makes jokes about bacon and things like that. But it is clear that, I mean, from
kind of an Amish experience.
Yeah, he says it's Amish, right? It's like, and they don't, growing up in those particular neighborhoods, I've lost my train of thought there. I've just had 2 trains to run into each other like a meme. You got to help me out of this.
We've got roots. We've got Holocaust.
Nobody gets to get out of their stories, right? You're not. So, and I think that's what Ye is responding to with this. He's like, we've been taught history to keep us in our boxes. Stop being in those boxes, learn to, and he's drawing Lex something about, a new living condition or something. I mean, he's going to do the ecosystems, right? The poetry of the engineer. And it's like, we need to stop telling ourselves these stories, the history that in fact keeps us from seeing ourselves as human. And I would say, of course, in the larger story of humanity, which has its tragedies on all sides, but that, insofar as you're using the forgive and forget, right? Insofar as you're using history to permanently, and this is the word that we haven't gotten to, but which was actually going to be the original title of this episode, perpetuate the trauma economy. Let's talk about that.
Oof.
I've changed it to Jesus is King and Ari talking to his audience. We'll leave it at that for a second. What is perpetuating the trauma economy? Why do both of them talk about it? I did Ari use those terms? Thing is, Ye has definitely used that. It's like when talking to Lex, he's talking about the trauma economy and the way in which Disney uses it. It's like we're all, and I did write this down, that we're all orphans of capitalism, because you go to see Bambi's mother dies, and that means that it's all the ice cream that you get off of that, trauma, and that we are perpetually traumatized. I mean, I do see that this is what Ye is trying to break Black Americans out of, and what he's saying is you're living off that trauma, and you're aborting your babies. It's like Planned Parenthood, more babies. But abortion is the major Black killer.
Yeah, he said the most dangerous place in the world for a Black child is in its mother's womb. His word.
Right.
Well, I mean, this is the other thing. It's the trauma economy, and then you've got the origin stories of two different peoples and what that means for them. If it is anchored in traumatic mythology, which is interesting from the perspective of the African Israelites, because this is not the case of their origin story. It's that, you tell the story of the Exodus, which is God drawing us out of enslavement into the liberty of the service of the tabernacle and bringing us to the promised land. That's the foundational myth of Israel. It's not traumatic, it's anti-trauma. But Ye is describing this psychological anchor of Black America in being described as slaves and describing themselves as ex-slaves, and therefore he's saying we don't have museums to Mansa Musa, for example. Right. Ari did the same thing. He's describing the discussion amongst his people, the Orthodox Jewish community, and saying how we're always talking about surviving. We're never talking about how we've done anything that is conquest, or we're not winning, we're surviving. Right. So there's a kind of parallel story in both situations, which is not Israelite. That's why I find quite shocking. It's like the foundational mythology of Israel is not survival. It's the conquest of the God of the Hebrews over Pharaoh, over the Egyptian system, bringing us out of that slavery and pulling us into the promised land, which then
they have to actually fight. They have to fight the Canaanites for it, so that's not quite so simple. But
no, but I mean, in the sense that the ego of Pharaoh is conquered by this miraculous plagues of Egypt, and then he finally relinquishes them, and then they have to walk through the Red Sea that's parted, and it's phenomenal. But I know what you're saying. So yeah, there's this discussion on what mythology we're telling about ourselves, what's the origin story that we're stuck in, and then both of them in their own way saying, hold on, we're stuck in an origin story which kind of sucks. We're describing ourselves as oppressed only. We're describing ourselves as surviving only and not anything else. What does that mean?
Well, I think it's not just it's a trauma economy that is being used to control them. And I mean, Ye is, it's like it's I changed the picture. Now we have the demons, all the demons let him know this is a mission, not a show. And then Ari in front of his candles, right? So we actually see like, so Ari, whatever, who he credits one of his friends who helped them with the set, right? But this is an altar, or it's a burning, right? It's a sacrifice. It's something. And Ye is doing his things on these grassy hills, and I know there's a lot. Whatever they're doing, we're gonna have to unpack all of that imagery there. But both peoples, both the Orthodox, which Ari we talked about the sin chicken. We got to talk about the sin chicken. Both of them are using forms of trauma to keep people within the community, and the horror of. I mean, talk about gatekeepers, right? It's like if you give up on that trauma, if you stop, if you actually have babies, if you actually recognize, that Planned Parenthood is not your friend, women, right? Do not think that Planned Parenthood is being your friend in any sense. It is enslaving you with the trauma of killing your child for the rest of your life. And the specific thing. So Ari tells the story about the chickens that are apparently they do it up in Skokie and in Chicago too. But in the very Orthodox communities, you need to do something with your sins at Yom Kippur. So you pray them off and then put them onto something else. And I do want to know where this goes with the idea of the crucifixion and the sacrifices and things like that, because we understand that Christ bears our sins. Yes. But with the chickens, they pray them off. The chicken takes them, and then the chicken is guilty, and you kill the chicken and then give it to the poor people to eat.
Yeah.
You say, is this real? Yes. Well, I've actually read about it as an actual part of their religious practice, so I guess he's describing it accurately. I mean, he's the one who went to yeshiva and learned about the 1/60th rule of the ham. So yep. That you are, why is this sort of horrible sacrificial practice? Sacrifice always comes into it, and it's like I was thinking about what pictures to put up with this. I didn't want to do any jokes other than the ones that were internal to the show. Exactly what the crucifixion means in contrast with these trauma economies. Because I think when the forgive and forget is Christ is on the cross and says, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. So he's taking our sins on. He is taking all of that sin. And the crucifixion is is traumatic to meditate on. It's what Mel Gibson does, right? We've seen a lot of memes of Mel Gibson talking to Ye, jokingly right now. Somebody has to take on all the sins, right? Jesus takes on all the sins and bears them for the world and forgives us for our, their medieval devotions of, all like there's one that's Christ surrounded by all these implements of work, right? When you're not observing the Sabbath and you're all crucifying him all the time. We as the sinners, which means everybody except for Mary, crucify Christ because we are the ones putting all of those sins onto them and into him, and he carries them for us, and then is reborn as comes back to life as king because he's taken them on. Mm-hmm. Jesus is king.
Yes, of the
Jews. Which is what Yai keeps saying. It's like it says that in John. He's king of the Jews, and Pilate they say no, take that off. And Pilate says, "What I have written, I have written." Right. So it's there on the banner in the three languages of Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. This is the king of the Jews. So he's bearing your sins. He's taking everything onto himself.
Yep. Which is another thing. Why is it so radical that Ye is saying, I am Jew in this case?
Well, because people don't, there's, this is the long-term arc, all of our episodes, the recognition that when the New Testament says it fulfills the prophecies, that when Jesus tells the apostles on the road to Emmaus that is what the meaning of all those scriptures is, he means it. And therefore we are the people of Christ, and he is the King of the Jews. So when Ye is saying that, I am Jew, I am, he's also saying I'm Christian, right? But the Christians and are the fulfillment of Israel.
The new Israel.
Well, the renewed Israel, right? It's the reformed. It's the rebirth of the people.
Yes. So this takes us back then to why talking to Christians that think like this becomes difficult for modernity and people like Piers Morgan.
Yeah.
Who may not think in this frame. To conceptualize somebody thinking that this is reality, which the apostles did, and I mean, I can speak for myself, but as a Coptic Orthodox Christian, this is how we think.
Right.
We are Israel. The attack then on, you can't take that term and apply it to yourself. This doesn't belong to you. And therefore, there's this incredible anger at somebody who's saying, no, I'm Semite. I'm Jew. It's a frame problem. It's a frame problem. Because for the Coptic Orthodox world, for the Christian Orthodox world, they have this very strong sense that there is a complete integration of the Israelite people into the population that adopted Christianity, and that the presence of Orthodoxy in Africa is impossible without the Hebrews being a part of the establishment of the church and the evangelization of the African people. It just doesn't happen without Hebrews. So it's like trying to describe this to Westerners sounds very weird, but when I'm hearing Ye say it, I go, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Right. He sounds like a cop. That makes perfect sense. People are getting aggressive because they're like, no, this is not it. This is you're stealing an identity. Blah, blah, blah. It doesn't belong to you. In the Coptic world, we have this very clear understanding that even the liturgy itself wouldn't exist without Saint Mark, the Levite.
Right.
Who was an African Levite, bringing it into Egypt, and then that liturgy being distributed amongst the Israelites of the Nile region. So it's a kind of moment where I picked up on something else Ari Shaffir said too when he was talking about the sin chickens. And
you guys got to watch this stand up. It's amazing. He really goes there.
Oh, it's magnificent. But he kind of mutters under his breath when he's describing the practices. It's just like some kind of like North African weirdness.
Voodoo.
Very quickly.
Does he use the word voodoo? Yeah. I think he does. Yes.
And I thought, there it is. There's the link, because it's not a geographical thing in terms of where we exist now in the modern world, in the vending machine world. In the ancient world, that's where the church is planted. That's where all of these practices are done. And so even Ari describing this, he's like, yeah, it's some crazy North African thing. So it's just kind of like this repeating theme of the world that the Israelites inhabited in the ancient times, and then how the themes are not going to disappear. It's embedded in the mythology, and it's going to keep popping out until people in the West can comfortably deal with it within the frame of the ancient church. Because if they're looking at someone like Ye and reading what he's writing, listening to what he's saying, in that frame, in the Western frame, they'll never understand it properly.
Well, what we've said is that whatever the West, it's interesting. His name is West, right? that this Western frame means the vending machine. It means this corporation. It means this branding. It means, you know, the stay in your box so we can buy and sell you. Literally, I mean, the sort of slavery. I mean, it's the, you know, indeed both Ari and Ye have talked about the need for freeing their people, and there's a, you know, there's a long riff in Ari's stand up on what it's like to come out of Egypt and what that means. And here's Ye saying, you know, I'm Moses. I'm trying to bring my people out of this commercial enslavement that we've been in. Back at one point, you were talking about the you know, sort of the Moses, right? It's interesting that back when we had the Catholic code, when you couldn't say all that rude language in movies, we had things like, oh, I don't know, Charlton Heston and the Ten Commandments. And I spent Christmas last year watching a lot of, you know, the 1950s like sword and sandal epics, and said, what happened to all our movies like that? I mean, we used to have movies. The one thing I'll be kind of nostalgic about, right? The entertainment industry, corrupt as it was all along because stardom and celebrity and money and things like that, we did actually used to have some of this mythological vocabulary in our media. And it's, you know, Mel Gibson keeps trying to bring it back at that rich level, at that deep level of, can we get it at the symbolic resonances that the medieval used to think in, and as you and I have explored many times across these videos, across the Mediterranean, north and south, Europe, you know, northern Europe to Coptic Egypt and Ethiopia. It was not racialized in any of the ways that the vending machine has tried to racialize us. So that you have to be black, you have to be white, you have to, you know, fight each other for Black Lives Matter or White Lives Matter. I mean, Ye has also pointed out his, you know, his children are with Kim, who's white, in American vocabulary for the moment. If they're trying to break us up racially like this, they're trying to buy and sell us, and it's exactly what Owen has talked about in terms of slavery. All of us end up slaves to the corporations at this rate. Be pirates and stand up to the East India Company, for goodness sake.
Yeah, people are at that point now where they want a different mythology. I think they're desperate for it. That's why they're trying to recreate the meaning of everything.
I mean, this is, I get why this black girl wine is quite strong. It's black girl magic, and I've gotten through it. The magic is working on me, and I'm having trouble not going into dream world. We want a new mythology. This is why people end up fighting over things like the Lord of the Rings and the story that they want to be in, and the Amazon Rings of Power, which seems to have vanished, evaporated, and that it matters to be able to see yourself in these stories. So if you want the great story of Pentecost and all the peoples coming together of all races and nationalities and languages, just read Acts, which contains the same story as Queen Candace's eunuch and the fulfillment of the prophecy of Isaiah. It really all was, the Christian mythology is the coming together of all of these, glorious. Here's I've got Ye's performance. I don't know what this was from. It's got the album cover, and then in fact what Ari's full stage looked like with the candles and the light we are so yearning to be in this light and in this story and in this glorious celebration of God as our maker, which is why in fact Ari's jokes about the front butt are a little much. And and the world wants to keep us from it. They want us in packages and that you can buy and sell, and not in the glory that we are created for.
Mm. Idols, not icons.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course,
No, we
idols
have
are
to be alive.
dead and cannot speak or live. And they wanted Ye as an idol that they could buy and sell. And Adidas wanted that. I mean, Adidas was founded by literal Nazis, so hilarious that they dropped Ye. It's in the Wikipedia entry. They were founded by literal Nazis. And then Ari manages to make a joke about JP Morgan being Nazis because they're canceling him just like the Swiss banks canceled the Jews. You know, the sort of don't and this to take us back to what Jonathan Peugeot taught me to look for. I mean, Jonathan talks all the time about the way inversions happen, right? Owen, Unauthorized Bears People talks about that too. It's like these things flip, the inversions. Look at the way all of these stories have been flipped on us so that we are at odds with each other, with the people who should be our brothers. We are, worried about skin color in a way that is irrelevant to our, being made in the image and likeness of God.
Well, the color problem disappears the closer that the closer that people will look to the African slave trade, the more the color disappears. The color problem disappears very quickly. As I was posting this morning, because I couldn't help myself, I had to get ready for the show today.
Well, now that we've warmed up on this, maybe we should continue the history lessons in those vein. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So the color palette in both of these sort of stage shots is very blue and yellow. These wonderful primary oppositions in the color wheel.
Contrast.
Yeah.
Well, he mentioned Mansa Musa, who was an Islamic ruler of Mali, or the Malian Empire. But this is the kind of gray area that I like to point to a lot. See, the Islamic world interrupts these categories of black and white in very uncomfortable ways. And what constitutes a Semite and what isn't a Semite, that is a very different conversation in the Islamic world than what it is in North America. So this morning I've been posting one of my favorite genres of history, which is the Black Sultans of the Indian Ocean. Just a kind of contrast to what people think slavery looked like in the ancient world, what African slavery looked like.
Right.
And, I've talked about this with you a lot, but it seems a missing element to the conversation in the West now, that the oligarchy of those trading systems didn't function with the same color line that they did in the North American continent. One drop was non-applicable, didn't exist. And the people that were called Arabs and who called themselves Arabs to like modern Westerners, they appear no different to what Kanye West does. In dress only. Their pigmentation is no different. They look like black Africans, but they referred to themselves as Arabs. And these were the ones that were running the slave trade across the Indian Ocean.
Right.
That is a bit of a shocking thing because they're Semites. They speak Semitic language. They refer to themselves as Arabs, which of course are Semites. And they were very much of the opinion of themselves as being Arabian, and they held their society together with this patriarchal system, so that you didn't inherit slavery from either parent, as long as your Islamic freeborn father was your father. So, yeah, I had to mention that while we're talking about this topic today, because the rest of the world, the Oriental world, isn't scared to discuss this. It's only Westerners that seem nervous to have these kinds of conversations on who is Semite. But in the Indian Ocean, that wasn't a color line. That was a patriarchal status.
Well, I think I think because Ari refers to this, his family's from Romania. And Lex talked about how his family is from Russia.
Yes.
And the sort of argument around anti-Semitism definitely develops in the 19th century as a part of the Zionist movement with Herschel, right? And I haven't reviewed all of this, but I think this is, again, Ari makes this joke in the thing, saying that meeting Jews in Syria, they don't have the victim mentality of the Europeans because they didn't have the Holocaust there. And so they're completely different, right? And I think this is that in the Anglophone world, I've got my dog Drake rapping in the background. What are you talking about? Shush. He's named Drake after, well, whales, but since we're talking about rappers, and you realize that in that picture I showed at the beginning with Jonathan, he's in the Drake template of the yes and no. Anyway, seriously, kiddo, shush. He wants to go out and meet the possum that was in the backyard last night. So there's possums. That the American conversation is it's simplified and caricatured on so many levels that, as you're saying, we don't understand the African complexity. We don't understand, and Ari's saying we don't understand the Jewish complexity, whatever, from whatever perspective.
Yes.
I would say, as we've said in previous episodes, we don't understand even the English speaking complexity, because we don't understand all of the different nations that different sub-nations that come out of the different English colonies. It's only the vending machine that benefits from this branding, this idolatry. And I like that you said it's idolatry because we want to make idols that are dead that we can buy and sell, rather than living icons of Christ, which is what Ye keeps saying he is. Jew, a living icon of Christ.
Yep. That's like this is the controversy now. Do we want to be idols or do we want to be icons? Do we want to stay in the vending machine or do you want to worship bread as God? Obviously it's not bread, it's a blessed Eucharist, but what do we want? What do we want?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good place to stop. So we have a few comments. The bears are in there. Father Bear, hello, Father Bear. Buzzsaw Bear, you left and came back, I think. Father Bear, self-censorship is taught and restricts thought and critical thinking. Yes. And that's what the trauma economy is. I think we're going to have to do another episode on the gaslighting and the trauma economy, because that's kind of in the background of all of this. But that you are trained to distrust your own experience. I mean, Ari is trying to talk about that in the way, I mean, when he's making jokes about turning the lights on and off and the Shabbos Goy and things like that. You're saying, and his end, before he plays the Louis Armstrong, he says, question everything, do your research, and then something rude. But it has to do with rainbows. That we are in the West conditioned by this trauma economy, and it's not only Black Americans, it's not only Jews of American or European or other, it's all of us are trained to be in the vending machine. And obviously that's a big theme for us. Rachel, Besselbeer. Rachel, what do you know about Zoroastrianism? Is it Christian adjacent? That's another topic. we'll get to Augustine and his Manichaeanism and the problem there, and that is complicated. So maybe you always can tell me in Social Galactic or on Telegram other themes that you'd like us to be exploring. But yeah, that'll come up. Besselbeer. I'll be a Shabbos goy to my Jewish farmer next door if they exist. Well, I think we should pray for Ari, as Milo did. I mean, recognize that Ari making all the jokes about the priests he's doing that. Milo is giving Ari a drink in that Skanks episode. Ari is trying to do for Jews what Milo did for the Catholics, and what Milo did in Diabolical, and what he did in Church Militant last year, in standing up for the lies that have been covered up, standing up against the lies that have been covered up in our own traditions is obviously incredibly important. And Ari is trying to show some of what he grew up with. Milo has obviously talked about that, and therefore it's not a surprise to me they got along when they did that show together. Okay, Enoch and... Okay, you guys are off on another mythology. We'll do Enoch and the Ethiopian Bible, and all of the angel stories will definitely can be something of the future. But any questions about Ye or Ari for those who are still watching? Bear, haha, white girl buying black girl magic. That's funny. Well, I am okay. You realize throughout all of this, I didn't like my state my cred and stuff like that. I live on the south side of Chicago. I have a Jewish name. Didn't you notice? So the Scots-Irish Presbyterians use all these Old Testament names. My name is Lamb of God, Rachel. What do you do with that? Rahel. I mean, it's like I kept picking it up, and she's like, "There's a sheep. My name by sheep." Sheep of the Lord, sheep of God. Hell. And as far as I know, I'm not Jewish in any of my lineage. I don't know, but the Presbyterians loved using the Old Testament names. So
you're lucky, because then you'd be going through the constant argument on Telegram on whether or not you're a converso.
I return to my ancestral faith of the temple. So there.
Yes.
So there.
It was the Great Restoration.
The Great Restoration of English. And I don't know the full German lineage that I have. I mean, it's on both sides and stuff. And when you look up those ancestral names on Ancestry.com, you get German or Jewish. Could be either. I think they're probably Lutheran, but I'm not positive. We are all mutts. And the one thing that Ari did say about the Jewish population is they tended to marry each other. They're a little bit purebred, shall we say. And we mutts love them.
Yeah.
Mutts for Christ.
Muttons and lambs.
Muttons and lambs. Is that all the points we want to make? That's all my slides.
Okay, so yeah.
Well, that was a journey. Yeah, thank you all for joining us. And this is, I think, we always think the most recent episode we've done is the most important, because of course it is. But this was really big. It was really big that Ye said something. That he made that shirt and wore it in Paris and got the fallout that he did, and then didn't apologize in the way maybe people wished he would to put him back in the box. And that Ari, in his stand-up in 6 minutes, was able to show how ridiculous this whole thing was from the beginning. So kudos to both young men.
They're smashing their way out of the vending machine.
Smashing their way out of the vending machine into the glory that is ours as creatures of God.
May all the icons be restored.
Amen. To be continued. Don't worry, we're not done yet. Thank you all for joining us. See you next time. Good night.